The first thing I saw was her clipboard slamming into my cabin door, hard enough to rattle the hinges, followed by her voice sharp, rehearsed, and loud on purpose, announcing that I was trespassing on my own land and that the structure behind me was illegal. 2 sheriff's deputies stood halfway down the gravel drive, hands resting near their belts, watching me like I'd already done something wrong. I remember thinking how strange it was that my quiet morning had turned into this, seen without any warning at all. I raised my hands slowly, not because anyone told me to, but because the moment felt fragile. One wrong tone, and it could snap. I told her calmly that this was my property, that the cabin had permits, and that I was happy to talk once she stepped off my porch. She didn't. She leaned closer instead, breath tight with authority, she believed. She owned and said, "You're going to regret building this thing." This cabin was my escape. I'd bought the land years ago, tucked just far enough from the main road that traffic noise faded into birds and wind. It wasn't wilderness, but it felt like it. I worked long weeks in the city, and this place was where I came to breathe, to tend a small garden, fix things with my hands, and feel like time slowed down a little. The cabin itself was modest. Wood, siding, metal roof, nothing flashy. Built by licensed contractors, inspected, signed off. Every document filed and saved in a folder I kept inside a lockbox. I didn't want trouble. I wanted quiet. The neighborhood technically fell under an HOA, though most people treated it like background noise. Dues paid automatically, newsletters ignored until her. Her name was Linda Hartwell, and she was the president of the HOA board. Late 50s, hair sprayed into place like it was part of her armor. Always wearing reflective sunglasses, even when the sky was gray. She had a golf cart with the HOA logo on the side, a whistle she never actually used, and that clipboard. The clipboard was her badge. Every time I saw it, I knew something unpleasant was coming. The first notice showed up a week after I finished. The cabin. A bright orange paper taped to the door, accusing me of unapproved structural development. I laughed at first, thinking it was a mistake. I emailed the HOA with copies of my permits. No response. Then came another notice, and another, each one escalating in language, fines added. Deadlines imposed. It's all signed by Linda, in bold, dramatic handwriting. She started showing up unannounced. I'd be fixing a fence or watering plants, and I'd hear the electric hum of her golf cart rolling up the drive. She'd park just close enough to feel invasive and stand there writing things. Down, lips pursed, nodding to herself. One time she measured the distance between my cabin and the tree line with a tape measure like she was searching for a crime scene. Another time she took photos through my windows. When I asked her to leave, she told me HOA authority extended. Anywhere she needed it to. The violations became absurd. My cabin was too rustic. My garden beds were agricultural use inconsistent with residential zoning. The woodpile stacked beside the cabin was a fire hazard, despite being nowhere near any structure. She'll fine me for not displaying an HOA-approved address marker, even though the county-issued one was clearly visible. Every fine came with a warning that continued noncompliance could result in enforcement actions, whatever that meant. What got to me wasn't the paperwork. It was the feeling of being watched. I'd notice her park down the road pretending to check her phone. I'd find tire tracks near my fence line that hadn't been there before. Once, I came back from the store and found a red tag hanging from my door declaring the cabin unsafe for occupancy. No inspector name, no agency seal, just her signature. I started documenting everything: dates, times, photos, video clips, emails. Saved and backed up. I stayed polite in every interaction. Calm, short sentences. I never raised my voice. It seemed to irritate her more than anything. She wanted me defensive, apologetic. Instead, I was prepared. The turning point came quietly. I hired a local land use attorney not to sue, just to review my situation. He listened, flipped through my binder, and nodded slowly. He said very little. At first, then he asked one question that stuck with me. Has she ever set foot inside your property boundary without permission? I told him yes. Multiple times. He smiled just a little and said, "Keep recording." A few days later, Linda escalated. She arrived with 2 other board members I'd never met, waving a cease and desist letter she'd drafted herself. She told me I had 48 hours to vacate the cabin or face removal. I asked under what authority. She said the HOA charter. I asked her to show me where. She refused and stepped past me toward the door. That's when I told her to stop. She didn't. She pushed the door open and tried to step inside. I blocked her, gently but firmly, and she screamed, loud enough that the neighbors heard. She pulled out her phone and called the sheriff, claiming I'd threatened her and was living in an illegal structure, which brought us back to that morning. Deputies standing in my driveway, Linda shaking with righteous fury, me breathing slowly, heart pounding, hands still raised. When the deputy asked for my side, I told him I'd like to show him something. I walked inside and came back with my binder permits, inspections, surveys, correspondence, video clips of Linda on my porch, photos of her crossing my fence line. The deputy flipped through it all, expression changing with each page. He asked Linda to step aside. She protested loudly, insisting she was just doing her job. The deputy asked her what agency she had represented. She said the HOA. He nodded, then asked her to leave the property. She refused. That was her mistake. The second deputy stepped forward and told her again. She shouted that she had authority. He told her she did not. When she tried to push past him toward me, they stopped her. Calmly, professionally. I watched as the power drained from her face, placed by confusion, then fear. They cited her for trespassing and making a false report. They told her any further contact would be considered harassment. She stood there, stunned, while they handed her the paperwork. The clipboard slipped from her hand and hit the gravel with a dull thud. After that, everything unraveled quickly. The HOA board removed her as president within a week. The fines disappeared. A formal letter arrived apologizing for the inconvenience. Linda was ordered to stay off my property. I never saw the golf cart again. Now, mornings are quiet again. I sit on the porch with my coffee and listen to the wind move through the trees. The cabin stands exactly where it always has, legal and solid in mine. Sometimes I think about how close I came to losing that peace, not because I was wrong, but because someone else believed they were above the law. The silence feels earned.